Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm super delighted and tickled today to have a friend of mine, actually my ex-college roommate, on the show. It's been a while in the making, and I'm excited that she has said yes to share her career wisdom with the audience. So audience, today you're going to meet the fabulous Julie Pantano, who is a vice president of talent acquisition for a global research and advisory firm. In the last 10 years, she has led multiple global teams and supported various businesses within her organization. Julie is a mentor to her team and has grown several individual contributors into leadership roles, and she's also helped leaders progress into higher levels of leadership. She has a global reach with teams that span the US, EMEA, and India. She has a strategic mindset and guides her team to take the right actions to drive successful outcomes for themselves, their clients, and the organization. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to dive in. So the first thing that I would say, I'm always curious when guests come on the show, like, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
So that's a really funny question because, when I think about what I do in talent acquisition, this is a common theme. You don't grow up saying, I want to be in talent acquisition. It's one of those things. There are some people that do, right? But more often than not, people that are in talent acquisition, when you ask them the question, how did you get into talent acquisitions? I landed there, right? So they took some other journey and they ended up in TA.
Okay. But when you were dreaming as a little kid, because I remember I had a couple things. I wanted to be a teacher, and then my mom was like, there's no money in that. Find something else. I want to be a model. That didn't work out. Sometimes I talk about that on the show. But so what were you dreaming of when you were younger?
I don't know if there was anything specific, but I will tell you what excited me was that idea of having like working in a corporate environment, right? And going into an office and being all business and having a briefcase and right, all of those things that we associate with like working for a corporate company. So that always excited me when I was younger.
Okay. Well, give us a synopsis of how you landed in the talent acquisition space.
So I think, I worked in somewhat adjacent type of roles for a while. And then in early 2000s, I landed a great opportunity at a global investment bank in New York City. And that's what, and I was so excited about it. I loved the pace of working in finance. And that like really hit the mark when I talk about that working in a corporate environment, right? So now I was there and that was exactly what I wanted.
Mhm.
I was so excited to be there. I, worked really hard. I stayed late. I, asked a lot of questions. I inserted myself as much as I could. And, definitely was noticed. It was a really good opportunity to, kind of begin learning about TA in the corporate world, talent acquisition in the corporate world. And then in 2009, my boss left and she went to the organization I'm at today. And a couple of months later, I followed her. I went with her, and I've been there ever since. And this is really where I am now. Is really where I was able to grow my career. I started as an individual contributor. I was recognized, hard work, client focused, strategic mindset. I was recognized, and as we started to grow and scale our team, I was moved into leadership. And then since then, I've been promoted a number of times over the last few years, and now I'm one of, I think we're about 6 VPs that own global functions across our organization.
Very exciting. You said something interesting to me. You said I was noticed, I was recognized, and you also use language like hard work. Now, I know that being from the Caribbean, I got a double dose of lessons about hard work, keep your head down, and you will get recognized for your work effort. And that didn't always happen for me. So I wonder what do you think you were doing, or tell us how the recognition happened? I know it was promotion, but you were working hard. Was there anything that you were doing uh
So,
to to cause that recognition to happen for your hard work?
so it's really funny that you're kind of going down this road because as I was thinking about like you and I having this conversation, I was thinking about a lot of the things that you're saying. People say work smarter, not harder, right? And so it's not always just hard work. And I don't even think at that time I realized that it was being noticed. Now, in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, you were doing the right things because I've had this imposter syndrome that a lot of people have, and so all this time, like I didn't know all of these things that were happening. But when you look back, I'm like, oh, you were doing great work. You were doing the right things. People were noticing, and so when I look back now, right, I see things like I remember I had worked on this strategic project that I just took upon myself. I said, I'm going to put this together. We need this. And I just felt like that's my job, right? I'm just doing my job. And got picked up by somebody more senior level. And they sent it to my boss, and there was a big buzz about it. Everyone was so excited. This is great work. They gave me an intern to help me flesh it out. And so again, at the time, I was like, okay, this is great. But now looking back, I'm like, see, you were doing great things. And, I think the other thing that speaks to the work I was doing is that my boss called me up when she changed jobs and brought me to her new organization.
So one of the key things I'm hearing is sort of mentoring and sponsorship, because I do think that those are important things to have in your career. And then you mentioned the project, and what came to mind for me was having exposure from something high visibility where people are noticing, senior level are noticing, and they're wanting more of that. So I want to make sure we underline that to listeners, the importance, as you talked about the relationship with your manager at the bank, and then also at this advisory firm. That's sort of like a sponsorship, using a relationship capital and noticing your performance and helping you to navigate the workplace.
Yep. Yeah. And, I think, again, she, unbeknownst to me, right, she was paying attention to what I was doing and saying, this is someone who I'm gonna call back and bring with me into my new role, right? Because when you get to those levels, right, as um, the work that you do is just made better by the people that are on your team,
Mhm.
right? And so now I look back and I'm like, oh, I was a really great team member, right? And that's helping her, right? So she was excited to bring me over because now I'm helping her. But I do agree with you. I think sponsorship and having people that know what you can do and the value you can bring, help you along, right? Because we're not all good at everything.
Mhm.
And some of the things that I think I was not good at was, and you probably picked up on this, but almost like recognizing and being present and realizing the value that I was adding. So I almost needed that. And so it's like a confidence thing,
Mhm.
right? I almost needed someone to just give me that confidence and say, hey, this is really great work. And, maybe give me more things to do, right? Which is something that, I'm sure we'll talk about it today, but really excites me is being being asked to participate in or given strategic work to do.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I love what we're talking about. And I wonder, so as we think about the bank and also this advisory firm, I use the language a lot on the show about being a passenger in your career, which is really hands off and letting things happen to you. And then sometimes wondering, how did that happen? or being a driver, or alternating as well, or being a driver where you're very hands-on and intentional with your career. When did you notice? Let me ask you. I believe you're a driver, but let me ask you: are you in the driver's seat for your career at this moment?
At this moment, would say yes.
Yes. Okay.
Even just a couple of years ago, maybe not, but at this
Yeah.
moment, yes. But yeah, you can go keep going where you're going with the line of questioning.
Yeah. So when did you realize, have you played the passenger role? And what's that milestone or that lever or that noticing point where you shifted into the driver's seat?
Yeah. So I think this was in my current organization. When I moved into my first leadership role, um, I um, I everything was going well. I was enjoying it. I was doing some great work, but I kind of knew I could do more. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted something bigger. I wanted something more. And I saw something pop up. And so I was a little nervous. And I went to my boss and I said, hey, if you need help with that, or if you need someone to, to pick that up, I'm willing to help. Like I'm happy to help. I would love to get involved. And that was that. And I didn't I didn't realize it until I was like, oh, like I said, I was a little nervous to ask. And then a few weeks later, she came back to me, a few weeks, maybe a month later, she came back and said, hey, we actually would love for you to take on this. And it was
Mm-hmm.
big. It was bigger than what I asked for. And somebody was leaving and they needed some. And I was so excited and so surprised, but super excited. And I think I realized or started to realize in that moment that that was a good thing, right? I mean, you have to be careful about it. You have to take things on cautiously, right? You have to make sure that you do have the bandwidth and the support to be successful. But I knew that that was a good thing. Like me saying I wanted to do more, like they were excited about that, right? The leadership team was excited about that, and so I think that was kind of the moment I started to realize.
Mm. I love that you brought up Julie asking for what you want. So
Mhm.
give us some tips, give our audience some tips for how do you formulate and ask for what you want in your career? And you can use an example or however you want to frame it, but how do you dip into the confidence to ask for what you really want to do or how did you do it?
Yeah, I think that it is, and now speaking as from, Julie today, I think it's really knowing the value that you're adding, and then and bringing in that word you just mentioned is confidence. Knowing that you do good work, knowing that you add value, and also being smart, right? And knowing what needs to be done, right? If you're going to go and ask, right? I'm going to go and ask, I want to do something more, right? Make sure it's something that makes sense. I want to do this, or I want to travel here, or whatever it is that you want to do. I think make sure it makes sense, right? Is this something that is the right thing for you, for your career, for the organization, for the team? And if it all makes sense, then I think you go ahead and you have the confidence and you put it out there. The worst
Mm,
thing is somebody says, no, that's not going to work right now.
mm. All right, so we're going to ask for what we want. Well, knowing what you know, Julie, about your lengthy career tenure, what would you say are the key ingredients for successfully owning your career?
So, I would say, so for me, these are some of the things that I think about when I think about owning my career, and things that make it easy for me to do my job well. One is focusing on kind of like what I just talked about, focusing on the most important activities. So being okay letting go of things. And I've always worked this way because I like to be very organized. And when there's too much going on, and right, then you aren't organized anymore. So I think, figuring out what are the top things that are going to be impactful and focusing on those, and like I said, and I've gotten better and better at this over the years, being okay with letting go with things, letting go of other things. And then I think along the same lines of this is, making sure things are simple and easy. for people to understand, right? So really simplifying the way that you work. And then I think the big one, and I learned this many years ago from my first boss, the one that I worked for at the bank, is building strong relationships. And it sounds like, of course, you have to do that. But, at the time, I was building relationships on my team,
Mhm.
in my organization, on my team, right? And she was like, no, you have to have relationships on the bigger team. You have to have relationships with the whole organization, right? With our whole expanded team, because when it's time for promotions and somebody brings up your name and everybody in the room is like, who's that? I don't know who that is, right? That's, you want, when your name comes up, you want people to say, oh, I know her. I worked with her on this, or I know her. She reached out to me on such and such, and wow, she's really great. So you want people to kind of light up when they hear your name, and right, so you get that, but you also get. I said this to someone the other day that I was having a mentor conversation with. You also get. It's really easy to phone in a favor if you know all these people and you need something that's going to help you. Now you have that open door to give them a call. It's not a cold call; it's a warm call.
Mm, I love that. What are some tips or strategies that have worked for you for building stronger career relationships? You talked about that expanded leadership team. So, there may be some hierarchy challenges for some people listening where depending on where they sit in the organization, and you have an aspiration of really connecting with the leadership team and above executive leadership team. What are some strategies that worked for you for building those strong relationships?
Yeah. So I am, listen, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a little on the shy side. And I am very, cautious. I'm kind of that person to say, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Right. Like I have that approach, and I'm working on that today. Right. Like, no, I belong here, and I should be able to ask this question. So I'm super thoughtful if I'm going to someone who, there was someone recently who, is part of my organization. They're a little more senior, and they're an amazing speaker
Hmm.
and presenter. Just excellent. Like, tell a great story, concise, like confident. And so I wanted to start to learn from this person, and I took it slow. And I said, let me like build up that relationship first, right? And so it was just kind of at first just being friendly, like let's like be friends, like let's have a coffee, right? And take it slow, right? Not say, hey, can I put an hour on your calendar for you, like to mentor me? So I took it a little more slowly, and I think that worked well for me.
Take it slow. And what do you say to the people who they don't know what to talk about when, you get a senior leader or you get someone to agree to connect with you for a coffee chat, and you get there and you're a little shy and your tongue is tied. What are you talking about?
Be prepared. Don't show up and say, and not be prepared. Have some really great questions to ask that person, even if it's like some of the questions that we're talking about today. Like, how did you get where you are in your career? What are some of the, do you have any tips? Like, have some really specific questions, two or three really specific questions, because not only are you going to make that conversation flow, you're going to make valuable use of that person's time, but they're also going to be like super impressed.
Mm, mm, love that. Awesome. So then how do you nurture? So you've got that first conversation under your belt. Because this is work to build these relationships, right? It's not one and done. So then what's the next step? How do you nurture the relationships to get to the point where you could even call in a favor like you mentioned, or depend on the relationship?
Yeah, I think you have to have that, like, it goes both ways mindset. Like, what can I offer this person as well? I would also say, don't be fearful, right? Ask, say, I'd like to put another 30 minutes on your calendar, next month or in 2 months. And again, be prepared. And this is what I would love to talk about. Or, hey, I'm working on this. Do you have any advice? And so I would say consistently follow up. Don't take too much of their time up. I really do think that's important. I think people are really busy. Maybe it's 30 minutes or an hour every month or every other month. But I think the big piece is to be prepared, and you do the heavy lifting, right? Don't make it them feel like they have to come and teach you something. You do the heavy lifting. You come with, here's what I want to learn, or even here's something I'm working on. Would you take a look at? Because you're gonna learn that way.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for those valuable tips there. So, as we continue, can we talk a little bit about risk? Because some of that reaching out to other people could be other divisions, other leaders. There's an element of risk in
Mhm.
there. So, how do you view risk in your career?
So I think for me personally, if you do it right, I think it's really important. I think in life, right, we know that it's important to take some risks, because otherwise everything just stays the same. I think, talking about risk, I would go back to what I was talking about earlier, like raising your hand, saying, I want to help, I want to do something different. I think when I did that, it was noticed. And I think people knew, hey, this person is open to change. This person is open to picking up and doing something totally different. And I was.
Mhm.
And so I just like the learning part of it. I like getting exposure to new people, new leaders. And so I think that they recognize that. And so I was asked over time, I was thinking about this in the last 9 years, I've been asked 3 times to take on completely new remits and new roles, where other people have been kind of in the same position for the 9 years.
Mm,
And so for me, no big deal because it was exciting. Like I liked it. And again, like your organization is going to find you valuable if you're able to change and pivot and learn quickly. I will say, these might sound like small risks, and maybe they are. I wish I had taken some bigger risks, right? I always say, I wish I had taken an international assignment.
mm.
And I didn't do that, but I think for anybody listening, if you have the opportunity, gosh, I would jump at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get it. I wish that I had moved, you know, I was closed-minded to relocation. And
Yeah.
those are some of the things, new places, new opportunities. So totally get what you're saying. The international sounds nice too.
Yeah, totally. And I always say like I like, changing jobs and doing different things. And I've been lucky because I've gotten to change jobs within my organization. So I haven't had to leave the great organization that I work for. I've been able to stay and still learn. But imagine if you move to another city or another country, how much you would learn.
Right.
Change your job and move to another country. It would be amazing. So I never did that, but I did change the scope of my job a number of times, and it 100% helped me to get to where I am today in my role.
Awesome. So what book are you reading or have you read that's been impactful to you in your career?
Oh, I'm reading a book right now, and I should have taken it out, and I'm trying to see the title. Can I grab it really quickly?
Yeah.
Because I don't remember the title, but it was one of these it was one of these things where I love like getting like little tips and tricks and things that you can put in your back pocket. And it's funny, I was telling someone the other day about your podcast, and I was like, and she was like, "Oh, I
Yay.
listened to it." And I said, it's one of those things, there's all different people on there. And if you can take away one or two things from each person, all of a sudden you have like this whole toolkit, and you are going to be doing things that you don't even remember where you learned them, right? But you're always picking up and learning different things. So this book is called The Unspoken Truths for Career Success.
Mm,
And there's a lot of navigating pay, promotions, and power at work. I think power is one of the ones that I really need to work on, in feeling empowered and uh, feeling empowered, right? And,
mhm.
doing being able to have conversations with all different people in the organization in a confident way.
I love that. Thank you for that resource. Are there any other resources that have been helpful to you in your career?
So like for like written things, I really like the Harvard Business Review. If you they do like a management tip of the day, And some days I open it and I'm like, oh my God, like I needed that today. And it's really
Mm,
good. And then one of the other things that I have always done and I still do today is I kind of pay attention to all the people around me. And I know who is highly thought of in my organization. And I watch them and I try and mirror what they do. And
mm.
I just pay attention and I listen and I watch them. Sometimes I'll copy what they do, like, oh, look at that presentation they put together. It was amazing. I'm going to copy some of that, right? And it's
Yeah.
just a great way to get ideas from people that are successful.
Yeah. In my past life in corporate America, they used to call that, or the terminology used was search and spin. So look, pay attention to these influencers or the people that you admire and learn from it. Take that and then spin it into your own thing. So
Oh,
I love that idea.
that's
So
awesome. I never heard that, but I love
yeah,
that. That's what I
yeah.
do, right?
It's
I'm always looking around and then I take it and make it my own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You put your flavor on it. I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So let's talk about, your career body of work. I'm always curious to ask guests this question. And it really is about, summarizing into a title the key message from your career body of work. So if you had to write a book and give it a title that represented your career body of work, what do you think that title might be?
So the themes and the big things for me are that, open-minded, comfortable with change, learning, always wanting to learn, and, being willing to put in the hard work. So maybe it's something like, work hard, um, keep an open mind, and success will come.
Yeah. I love it. All right. So we're going to play with that there. Those are some really, really great tips, Julie. Thank you for that. And are there any parting words as we begin to wrap the interview? Are there any parting words of encouragement that you have for our listeners just around owning their careers?
So you just made me think of something. And so I would say, confidence is really important. If you don't have it, find it. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. But if you don't have it, you need to find it. There's something that I never did, and I never thought you needed to. We were talking about this in the beginning. If I work hard and I do all the right things, my boss is going to notice and they're going to take care of me. And
Hmm.
most of the time your boss is going to notice and whatever. And I never realized until maybe the last 5 years how important it is to make sure people know what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I think when I was younger, I thought like, oh gosh, it feels so awkward to do that. But it doesn't have to be awkward. There's ways you can go about doing it. You can, when you do your end of year review, write your own review, right? Beforehand and share. I did that last year and I did it really well. And it worked out really nicely for me. But like I shared, like here's, and you know what, your boss is going to be like, oh, thank you,
Right.
right? I just put down all my accomplishments so they don't have to go back and remember, oh, just have to try and remember all the things Julie did last year. She just handed it to me,
That's
right? So
right.
not only are you handing it to them and you're making their life easier, but you're also reminding them, oh, remember I did this and remember I did this. And here's the impact that it had. And here's the, what it did for the team. And here's what it, right. And so not being shy about sharing the great work that you're doing, I think is really important.
I love that. I once had somebody say, people are not thinking about you. So, so you've got to remind them about what you're doing. And I love what you're saying. Make your boss look good. Like make it easy for people to speak your name in rooms or advocate for you. And by doing that extra step of writing up your review commentary, even if you don't have to do it, writing it up for yourself would be a good thing to have because it's going to be a confidence booster.
Totally, totally agree.
Well, Julie, it has been a pleasure to have you on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Can you tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you if they would like to?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really flattered that you invited me.
Of course.
And I think the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. Because of the work that I do, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. So you can find me, Julie Pantano, on LinkedIn.
No, we need a LinkedIn tip because we didn't even go there. But because you just brought up LinkedIn, I'm not going to let the interview end without a LinkedIn career ownership tip from you.
I would say two quick things. One is make sure your profile is professional and complete, right? You have all your information in there, because this is the way people find you, right? Not only for jobs, but who knows, you might get a call for a great job if you have a really good profile, but for networking.
Mhm.
Um, and that would be the second thing is like it's a great networking tool. So even if you're not looking for a job, if you're looking for advice or something, in fact, I have a conversation later today with somebody who's worked where they reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I want to pick your brain on something." So
Mhm.
it's a great professional social media tool.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all the wisdom that you have shared with our audience today. It's been a pleasure again to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.